Standard Rugby Podcast with Lawrence Dallaglio.
Well, welcome to the Evening Standard Rugby Podcast. My name is Lawrence Dallaglio, and joining me, as ever, is the Evening Standard Steve Cording. Steve, a smile on your face this weekend after a wonderful weekend of sport.
It was a wonderful weekend of sport and a wonderful weekend of weather, wasn't it? We combined the both. I managed to watch the boxing on Saturday night, which was great. A lot of rugby to watch, obviously. And then we were both at Stamford Bridge yesterday, enjoying Chelsea's win to finish the season. Did you enjoy that one?
Well, I did, actually. But before all that, I rather enjoyed the Premiership, if I'm honest. I was at Harlequins for their final game of the season. Of course, all the matches kicked off at the same time, which is quite unique. Everyone going for a top four finish. So many different permutations. For our listeners, there were wins for Bath, for Sale, famous win at Saracens at the Stonex. Quins undone by Bristol at the Stoop. Leicester finally flexing their muscles and beating the Chiefs and ending their playoff hopes. And Gloucester with a big win against Newcastle at home before the Challenge Cup final. So, it was exciting because, a bit like the football season, I guess, it's one of those, the only time of the year when they all kick off at the same time, and we have more as it stands tables and outcomes throughout the course of the 80 minutes than ever before.
So, Lawrence, I see the Holy Trinity were back together again last week, weren't they? What were you up to there?
Well, by Holy Trinity, you mean the England back row, as was Neil Back, myself and Richard Hill. I'm not sure who the Father, the Son or the Holy Ghost is. I'll leave you to decide that. But no, listen, it was great to see those two guys. Spent a lot of time together. I think we played 46 times together in England's back row.
Wow. We
had a sort of commercial dinner that we were invited to be the three guest speakers at. We even sat in our positions on stage. So I was in the middle with, Neil Back's very OCD, so we had to look after us and make sure we're in position. And great to tell a few tales, really. Richard Hill, as we know, is part of the current England setup. So, getting in front of him or getting him out is quite challenging, really, because he's so busy with the England team and probably rightly for the right reasons has to be quite guarded. But we had a fun night at the Stoop, and I think we all sort of reminisced on what it was like to play together so many times, and the kind of drivers for why each and every one of us played rugby for England, really.
Were you all very, very different characters?
Not really. I mean, we had this kind of... We got together in different circumstances. When I first started playing rugby, I was a 6. Then I got capped for England at 7, much to Neil Back's annoyance, who was probably stabbing the voodoo doll every time I got selected. And then I ended up playing 8. Richard started at 8, right, and then moved to 7, and then ended up playing 6. And we first came together when we lost to New Zealand at Old Trafford, and Clive Woodward took off Tony Diprose and moved me to number 8 from 6. Moved Hilly to 6 from 7 and brought on Neil Back. And that was the start of quite a long-standing partnership between the three of us. And we used to have this warm-up ritual where we'd all run out together at Twickenham or wherever we were, and we'd do a couple of laps of the pitch. And then we'd warm up together and we would talk through the game and where we saw our roles and who would do what and just remind each other. And we conceded a couple of early scores against New Zealand that day. And we said, that's never happening again. We need to understand each other's roles inside out. And we spent the whole time warming up together, and I think we ended up doing a pretty good job.
It's a big, big week. The next couple of weeks, we're going to be joined later by Gordon Darcy to preview the Investec Champions Cup final. But joining us now to chat about all things Premiership is the Evening Standard's rugby correspondent, Nick Purewal. Nick, how are you?
Hi, Steve. Yeah, I'm good. Hi, guys. How are you all doing?
Very good. Looking at the picture then, the playoff picture, obviously, I guess the big winners that none of us picked was Sale getting through. Fantastic result for them at Saracens.
Yeah, absolutely. Sale are... At points they've had a mixed season, but they feel like they've been building all the way. And I think that going into that game, they certainly felt like they'd politely crept under the radar, but privately they probably a little bit annoyed that they hadn't been receiving the credit that they felt was due in certain circles. So they certainly turned up and proved their point, didn't they? Mark McCall was pretty angry afterwards and pretty disappointed with a fairly flat performance and and one that he didn't see coming. But he also said after the fact that Saracens have made a feature of their season of bouncing back absolutely when they have to most and digging themselves out of holes. And they have done that very well. Their spirit in that regard has been really impressive. And like he said, they have to do it again now because there are no second chances. And obviously finishing fourth was not in the script. But he's also said that if they have to do it the hard way, they will. But it really is the hard way now because they've got to go to Northampton on a Friday night. And it was only a few weeks back that they were at Northampton on a Friday night and they were well beaten, even though they scored a couple of late tries to gloss the scoreline. But they were well beaten by the Saints that night. And unless they really pull everything out now, then they are probably up against it to retain their title.
But Sale, their form has been outstanding, hasn't it? I mean, they've secured 24 out of the last 25 points. And if momentum is anything, Lawrence, then they've got it going into the playoffs.
They have, yes. And I guess we probably should have seen that coming. Sale started the season very well. I think they won 6 of the first 7 matches. They then went off the boil for a long, long time. And I don't know whether it was injury related, whether it was just something that was... They're always hard to beat, but they weren't really firing in terms of their attack. They went on a record loss run in the Premiership. And really, I guess the turnaround has been since George Ford and all the international players have come back, they have started to win games and win well. I think if you look at the bonus points, they are somewhere down the bottom of the table. They were scoring 2 tries, maybe 3 tries in games, but not closing out that try bonus point. And I think the worry was that there were sides like Bristol, sides like Exeter, Quins, who were winning games with bonus points, and that Sale might just miss out. But a run of I think 4 victories on the bounce, they gave themselves. They were almost playing a quarter-final every week, like Jeopardy. And listen, they've risen to the challenge. I didn't expect them to win at the Stone X. I don't think anyone did. But Alex Arneson going back there, he must be brimming with pride. And look, Saracens must be a little bit concerned because in the day that they announced, or the week that they announced that all 3 Vunipola brothers would be leaving, on top of the other major departures, you'd have expected a bit of a response and them flexing their muscles. But the Premiership's so tough. Look, Saracens had to go to Bristol and win. And, how much did that match take out of them? Where they had to play for 60 minutes with, 14, then 13 men. And they came away with a win. And they're still in with a shout. I think the biggest win of the weekend for me goes to Bath. I think we should probably give them a bit of a nod and congratulate them on what they've achieved this season.
Did you see that today about their supporters? Apparently on Saturday, half the tickets that were bought for the Premiership final came from the Bath postcode. So they obviously feel that they are already got one foot in Twickenham.
Well, I guess I don't know, does the price go up? Does the price go up or not? I suppose they want to get themselves planned. Look, Bath, extraordinary, really. I mean, their results last year were horrendous. Some big defeats, I seem to remember, against the likes of Leinster and Gloucester. And then Van Graham and co have come in. They've shaken up the coaching team. Lee Blackett's there. And Finn Russell, not just Finn Russell, but when you've got Finn Russell in your team, anything and everything is possible. So it's important for them to have a home semi-final. They'll probably fancy their chances against Sale, but I wouldn't write off last year's runners-up just yet.
I'm most disappointed by Alfie Barbary. He's had his hair cut. He told us when he came on, Nick, didn't he? He said, if we get to the Premiership final, I will not have my hair cut, and he's cut his hair now. So if they get beat, they'll know why.
Northampton, if you were comparing them to an international team, you'd say that there's a New Zealand feel about the way that they play, because they do have that ability to score some incredible tries, and we've seen already the likes of Freeman and Finn Smith and Fraser Dingwall. They've got some amazing players, but they do kick the ball an awful lot. And there was always this kind of myth that the All Blacks never kick the ball. But I can assure you they kick the ball a hell of a lot. And when you look at the stats in the Premiership, Northampton kick the ball more than any other side. And that is in direct contrast to the way that they used to play, where they didn't kick enough. Now, if I'm a Quins fan, I love the do or die, the kind of, the DNA is, attacking's in our DNA. But, if you want to win a trophy, guys, defence needs to be in your DNA as well.
I was going to ask you that. Which team can look at it who missed out on the playoffs will feel most disappointed? Is it Harlequins?
I think so. I mean, listen, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's good sides that have missed out. I mean, Exeter have come to the boil, but just unfortunately, probably a week or two too late. And there's a few teams that will feel aggrieved. But when you look at it, yes, the balance, you have to get the balance right in your game. Scoring tries is imperative, especially the way the laws are at the moment. But you can't be conceding that many. And I think Quins have almost, in a way that Wasps used to be when Lee Blackett was there, you can't be that cavalier and just say, well, we're going to outscore our opponent, because it does create really entertaining games. But ultimately, your luck runs out in the end. And I just feel that Quins are almost where Northampton were a couple of seasons ago, where they're happy to go out and score 5, but they were conceding 5 or 6. So I think their focus for next season will be on defence.
Anyway, we will catch up and preview the Premiership playoff semi-finals next week. But for now, thank you very much, Nick. We'll chat to you soon.
All right, take care. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.
And joining us now on the podcast for the second time this season, a real friend of the pod, it's Gordon Darcy, the Leinster, Ireland and British and Irish Lion and multiple Champions Cup winner. So no better person really to preview and look ahead to the Investec Champions Cup final on Saturday at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium than Gordon. Gordon, welcome back on the pod. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, guys. It is I'm in London now at the moment. It is a very, very hot and sweaty afternoon. I see you've gone for the shorts, Lal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did think he looked like a tennis player when he came in, but he wasn't having that.
He did think I was.
He's Mr. M&S, aren't you?
Casting for Wimbledon or something as a Ralph Lauren ball boy or something. But listen, in talking of games of rugby, we have an extraordinary game, probably the final that everyone would have picked out at the beginning of the campaign. The 5-time champions Toulouse against your old team, the 4-time champions Leinster. I'm going to ask you this question. Leinster have obviously had a little bit of trouble getting it done in terms of the final in the last couple of years with those defeats to La Rochelle. I think their achievements this season have been outstanding. To get to the final, I think, is outstanding. The team that they're facing is probably, I think, potentially their hardest final that they've had for quite some time. So if they were to win it, I think it would almost go down as probably their best achievement, because on paper, this Toulouse team, certainly the way that they've been playing this season, look a real handful. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is. I think definitely the teams that maybe, as the season went on, you're kind of looking at it going other sides of the draw, and then how they shaped up. You're looking at this could be, if they manage to get there, it would be a huge final. I think Leinster have been, they've been in La Rochelle's shadow for a while, and that has weighed quite heavy on them. And obviously that performance in the quarter final was one that was deeply emotional. You can see for a lot of those players. However, this is while you've had that kind of, as I've been in that shadow of La Rochelle, you've had that one team on your mind. You've beaten them. Now you have to move on to this new challenge that Toulouse are bringing, and it's a different one. They've been so linearly, I suppose, so focused on trying to beat that power game that La Rochelle have over them. That someone like Toulouse brings in. They bring such a different variety of threats that, say, other teams don't have. So I think these are two teams that are very, very similar, and I think they both showed all of their qualities and all of their maybe the weaknesses perhaps a little bit in the semi-final. So I think it makes a very, very interesting matchup this week.
Yeah, I agree. I was at Croke Park for the semi-final, and I thought Leinster showed a resilience that possibly, it got them into the final. But let's focus on Leinster for a second. That they've played some outstanding rugby this year. You would be a good person to ask whether it's as good as some of the rugby that we've seen in previous years. It doesn't really matter, if I'm honest, as long as it's good enough. I guess, if you were a Leinster fan or a player, or as a former player, what would be the areas that they need to work on and their concerns? Because they very nearly threw it away against Northampton, and probably were a little bit in the end just relieved to get over the line. What do you think those concerns? Because James Lowe seems to be playing very well at the moment, and Gibson Park is tearing it up. But otherwise, do you think the other players just need to lift their levels ever so slightly?
I think so, but I think there's a couple of things in that. I think if you look at the guys who were playing, I think James at Gibson Park, James Lowe, there's a couple of guys there who haven't had much success with Leinster and are probably of an age where they're going, oh, I'm not sure how many more opportunities I'm going to get at this. So there's a huge motivating factor for that as a player. Do you know, when you're in that place where you're looking and go, I might only be playing for 3, 4, 5 more seasons. How many times do the stars align? So for me, that was definitely Jemison Gibson Park, James Lowe, and a couple of other players that they're at that peak in their career where they're like, they really, really wanted to capitalize it. And particularly Gibson Park, he played, not that it didn't matter, but he was playing with a point of difference to a lot of the other players. I think there's the human condition. They reached the dizzy heights in the quarter final against La Rochelle, and there is the old human condition that sometimes you can peak in the quarter final. And they played like a team that were trying to reach those heights again, but weren't quite mentally there. And I think that sometimes can happen. Like, what does Shane Lowry say when he won the British Open? Everybody tells you how to get up the mountain, nobody tells you how to come down. So Leinster looked like a team that weren't really as focused or as attuned to the challenge of Northampton. And I mean this honestly, that is no disrespect to Northampton, but Northampton haven't been the one knocking them out at crucial times over the previous 3 or 4 seasons. And they just looked like they were a little bit off that pace.
Other than the glaringly obvious, Gordon, in the number 9, and let's be honest, we've got the 2 best 9s in the world going head-to-head against each other. And Dupont and Gibson Park, amazing little head-to-head. Who are the other players that would really stand out for you? There's issues with James Ryan as well. I don't know what his fitness status is at the minute and whether he'll play a part in the game. Where are the key battles in terms of head-to-heads?
Yeah, and I think from a Leinster point, the players coming back in are huge. So James Ryan played at the weekend up in Ulster, so he comes back in. How they manage between James Ryan, Jason Jenkins, and Joe McCarthy, there's a huge opportunity there if we can get the balance right with those 3 guys. Hugo Keenan coming back at 15. Leinster look a completely different team when he plays. So I think depending on who goes at 15 for Toulouse as well, will it be Ramos or will they go with Kinghorn at 15? I think that adds Blair Kinghorn has gone down there and he's just fitted into that team absolutely fantastic, and is playing some of the best rugby of his life. So whoever they pick in that second kind of playmaker, broken field player for Toulouse will be really important. But for Leinster, what Hugo Keenan gives you in that backfield, he just covers all the backfield. It means Dupont and Tamak trying to find that trying to find grass in the backfield is greatly reduced because Keenan is so important.
What's your favourite memory of this game, Lawrence? I mean, how many finals did you play?
Played in 2. Lucky enough to win them both. But the Toulouse one, obviously, the first one sticks in your memory. And we spent the entire first half chasing shadows. They were an incredible side. How we were winning at half-time, God only knows. Sean Edwards spoke to us at half-time and made that point, and we came out and we scored a try in the second half, and then we hung on because their bench, they brought on El Assal, who, I mean, the French have got this knack of just having incredible players, and we were hanging on at the end. And obviously Rob Howley came up with a moment of Champions Cup history, and it was an epic win. But Gordon, I'm sure you have your own memories, so let's get nostalgic for a wee second. It could have been maybe against Leicester in 2009 or Northampton.
Yeah, Well, and to be fair, that is actually it, and for probably very similar reasons as to you. Well, I played 11 years of my career without getting near a trophy. So when I won that match with players that had been Shane Horgan, Malcolm O'Kelly, and we'd been there in the dark days of like a couple of hundred people supporting us in Donnybrook. It's really special to win with the people that you share that pressure and that stress with. So that meant a huge amount to me and to some of those lads like Shane Jennings, Leo Cullen coming back from Leicester. There's an awful lot of lads, Brian. We've given up an awful lot of ourselves to Leinster. And to finally share that together was really, really, really special.
Gordon, listen, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the pod. It's going to be a fascinating game. Will you be coming over to Tottenham, or will you be commentating from afar? What's the weekend?
Yeah, I'm coming over. No, I'm coming over with over at ITV, so over and back in the same day. So bit of a rush, but gotta be there to see this one.
Well, listen, let's hope that they pick up their fifth start. Gordon Darcy, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be back next week to discuss the game and, of course, look ahead to the Gallagher Premiership playoffs. But for now, thanks again to Gordon, to Steve and to Nick, and, of course, to Voxpod Studios. You can watch video highlights from this week's podcast on the Evening Standards YouTube channel. Thanks for listening, and see you all next week.